Hi, I'm Carolyn Lovewell, and you're listening to the Sleepover podcast. I'm here with my friend Anca Gray. Hi, Anca.
Hi.
And Anca is visiting us. She is dropping off. She's an amazing artist, and David and I commissioned a hyper sigil artwork from her, which she created this amazing evening at an incredible, gorgeous hotel, complete with a giant feast, and interviewed us and made this artwork based on our deepest aspirations. And she came to bring it to us last night, all the way from Chicago. Anca is an initiate of Sleepover Mystery School, so I wanted to talk to her while she's here and hear more of her story and hear about the way that Sleepover Mystery School affected her life. And I'm just so happy to have you here, Anca. Thank you so much for your brilliance, and thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for your brilliance.
Oh.
In many ways, I wouldn't be here without it. So I'm very grateful for how your story impacted my story.
Yeah. Would you tell us a little bit about your origin story, where you're from, and tell us a bit about that. You were telling me about your growing up Christian, and give the audience a sense of what was happening with Anca before Sleepover Mystery School.
I was a Jesus freak. I'm still a Jesus freak, but I was a different kind of Jesus freak. I grew up in Romania. I was there until 18, and I was very much influenced by my religious upbringing. I was super into Jesus from an early age. I really loved, it just resonated to me. It was like, I know this is true. I know this is truth.
Yeah, and your parents were sort of involved in Baptist and Pentecostal?
Yes. So those were kind of our options. The country is an Orthodox country, but they didn't really practice during the communist years. And so, we were what we call the real Christians. And, actually practicing and, being hardcore about it. But it wasn't just something that was imposed on me. I really resonated with the teachings of Jesus and everything that he did, and I knew what that was the truth, that it's true of all of us, that we can do the things that Jesus did. And I love this the magical, miraculous, I call it magical, that would have been totally not cool, but yeah, to me it's always been the same thing. It's just knowing what we are and our powers. And then it got proven by the early church, because they were literally doing it. Other people than Jesus were doing the same things that Jesus did. And I was like, yes, this is it. The problem was that we weren't doing that in real life. Everybody said we believe this stuff, but I didn't see it actually practiced. And that's been my inquiry. Like, where is it? Why don't you guys believe what you say you believe, and how come you don't see that you don't believe what you say you believe? So that's been my search, like where is it, and it wasn't just the miraculous things. It was, the most miraculous thing of all is being able to be loving and kind when things happen that don't make you feel very loving and kind, and that's the way that I was taught is the fruit of the Spirit, and it just naturally happens where you're inhabited by the Spirit of God. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, and self-control. It was very obvious to me that I cannot manufacture that on my own, no matter how hard I try. So, let alone the other miraculous workings, but yeah, it was obvious to me that it's the same kind of thing. If you can manufacture a kind response, you can probably multiply bread and fishes as well.
Yeah, exactly. So you were very interested in the gifts of the Spirit, and both and really in touch with the way that kindness and patience and joy are miracles just as amazing as walking on water.
Well, transformation.
Yes.
Like I could see that I want to be different, better. There's something different that I want. Mm-hmm. And it felt like well, this is how you get it, but like, where is it in practice? Because it was very obvious to me that I can't make that happen, and I wanted to be better. I was interested in transformation. This book was showing me that it's possible. I knew it was true, yet I wasn't really seeing people being transformed in real life in any way, shape, or form.
Isn't that the sucky part? I remember I went to a Catholic church growing up, and everybody there seemed thoroughly miserable. I was like, I do not see the gifts of the Spirit anywhere here.
And then you're just like a weirdo, like everybody's like, what are you talking about? Makes me think, there's like a movie like that, but I can't think of what it is right now, where you literally feel like you're taking crazy pills. Like, why are they making me feel crazy for just stating the obvious?
It's like, I'm talking about the book we're all supposed to be reading. It says right here.
You're like, what are you talking about?
I know, it's so funny the way that, I guess, conventionality and just like being like a cultural Christian who's just like kind of in it for I don't know what some folks are in it for.
But the thing is with the churches that I went to is that it was very easy to say, oh, we're not just nominally Christians because we actually go to also the other prayer nights, and we go, so like it was a big deal that you're serious because you're doing all these things. And then the Pentecostal church that I grew up in would have these nights where they pray to receive the Holy Spirit. And in the Bible, at the Pentecost, so 50 days after Jesus' resurrection, he had instructed the disciples to not go anywhere, to gather together and to wait for the Holy Spirit to come. So on the night of Pentecost, 50 days after Jesus' resurrection, they were all there praying, and suddenly the Holy Spirit descended in tongues of fire, and that each landed above every believer. And then they started speaking in tongues, and they were able to go out and preach the good news about Jesus' resurrection to all the different people that were in Jerusalem that spoke on the different languages. So that has become, for this church, it was the thing, it was like, it's the sign that you have the Holy Spirit if you speak in tongues. And so those nights when we have the prayer for the baptism with the Holy Spirit, then everybody was in so much fervor and, praying. And then you have like a room full of people that are, yelling in your ears, all of these cryptic, weird things. And then, at some point you start like, veering into that babbling kind of thing, and then it just happens, and then you never know, like, was that a real thing or was that not? But I always thought it was so interesting, first of all, that you can tell yourself that you're not that. It's so easy, the self-deception of, because I do this and that, so we're not like those nominal Christians, we're actually for real. Or you're just doing certain things that when you're for real you do, like visiting the sick people in the church and things like that, and of course following all the rules. But that was also interesting, just noticing how easy it is to self-deceive about what you're doing.
So what was it, so that was your background, and how did you find out about Sleepover Mystery School? How did you get attracted to it?
Well, there's this thing called the algorithm.
Was it on Instagram? Was it?
Yeah, I'm not on anything else, so it must have been on Instagram. Everybody was talking about this book, Existential Kink. It's just like all the people that I was attracted to and felt some kind of resonance to at some point had read this book. So I was like, well, I guess I gotta read that book. And it happens all so quickly. It all happened so quickly. It was what was the year of the mystery school? It was 2020.
2022, which seems it was 2 years ago, and it seems like forever.
I know. It's like literally a completely different life. It's hard to fathom. Like all of my soul family and closest friends and everything that I do is all that's wild that was just 2 years ago. Like what was my life before that? So in the actually it was August. It was August of 2021. 2021, I read Existential Kink, and I had my first mushroom journey. Both of those things happened on the same week.
Woo,
and here,
that's quite a combination.
Yeah. And here we go. I boarded the train. And I've been on the train ever since. So I read Existential Kink, and it immediately resonated with me. And then I was getting your emails, and it was all over.
It was done. It was
all over. I mean, it's so funny because I thought, like, I'm not into any of this, like, magic. None of, like, I don't get that. I'm not into it. I'm not necessarily interested.
Because a lot of people have that experience, because the book, I mean, I talk about magic, but it's not what most people think of when they think about magic. I think it's more like psychology or self-help or something. Mm-hmm. And then they, like, get on my email list and go deeper down my rabbit hole, and they find out, oh, baby.
Oh, baby. It's all that and more. But you said a lot of things that resonated with me, that basically the thing that, like, really attracts me to you is that you're very open. And I think you're very humble also, that you're willing to be, to be wrong and promote other things that work better for you than even your own stuff. And that's kind of a rare thing. I was like, this is real. I trust this. I immediately trusted you because of that. And the thing that really resonated with me from Existential Kink was a different way to view the world than I have been, that felt like deeply true to me. And it was about seeing the world from an artistic perspective versus a moral perspective. And that felt immediately like such a breath of fresh air. Like, oh yeah, I feel this. It felt like freedom instantly, that, like, you don't have to be good. That, like, overwhelming thing, like, what if, even what if, like, the way that I see the world is actually okay? What if I'm not, like, fucked up beyond all redemption?
What if?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that resonated with you, Anca. Yeah, I think it's funny because almost very many religions talk about God as creator. And I find if I just switch the language a little bit and talk about God as artist or God as author, everything makes so much more sense to me. Like, God is just, George R.R. Martin in the sky.
We'll call it in the sky.
Yeah. Somewhere. And, but yeah, it's also fun because I think about, how in Taoism, like in the Tao Te Ching, it talks about, when people try to be good, that's when evil arises. And it's like we're naturally aligned with something, and can we key into our original nature and ride with that? And it seems to be like, real self-acceptance and, like, real self-love opens us up to just flowing with the truth of who we are, which happens to have a lot of goodness in it, and usually a dash of wickedness that keeps things interesting, dash of selfishness or whatever. Us humans aren't. I love the Carl Jung quote of "I'd rather be whole than good." I think about that all the time, like.
I also, you remind me of a quote from this sage that I know actually in real life. It's my 10-year-old daughter. She just said it yesterday. I was like, I'm gonna make a note of this. Trying is for dum-dums. If you're trying, you've already lost the game. It's like you've considered that you've lost the game. You can't. And it goes back to what I was finding out, even myself as a kid, that no matter how hard I try, it's just not working.
Yeah. So cool. So the message of Existential Kink resonated with you, and the offers for Sleepover Mystery School started coming out via the email list, which we had never done before. So you were you were in the first cohort.
OG,
so
baby.
Totally
we're
OG.
making the t-shirts,
Total OG. And you were just like one of the people who were like, wow, well, there's no testimonials for this. It sounds like some far out thing that's happening, and I'm going to do it.
If it was established, I probably wouldn't have, to be honest. That's just me. But there's other things you said. And again, none of it makes sense. But then again, I don't make decisions that make sense ever. So that's how you know it's right. None of it made sense, except that you said something else that really piqued my interest, which, again, like how are you this exact combination of all those things that, gets exactly the right people from completely different backgrounds and histories and what they bring is like so vastly and wildly different, but somehow you have these little things that like ping each one of us. I think that's actually like deep down your greatest magic. You're an attractor of all the weirdos. All the right weirdos. But you said we are the second coming of Christ, and I was like, oh my God, that's it. Because I had just realized that I went to see this movie in theater that my parents were taking my children to see, and it was about the birth of Jesus, and at the end of it they had this whole concert thing, so some of the best Christian musicians were there, and everything they sang about was waiting for Jesus to come back and save us. And I was like so bummed out, like, are you guys still on this thing? Like, you still wait? How long are you gonna be waiting for? Because it's so obvious to me by this point that what Jesus was saying is that we are it. And like, I used to go to this church. They used to say the local church is the hope of the world. I'm like, oh no, honey, like, no. If you're waiting for Jesus to come save us, you've got this all wrong. And then somehow this like weirdo cult magician, like gets it. You got my attention. You got my attention. And then of course, I didn't think I was gonna actually do it. I was just curious about it. So I had the application open in my browser for like weeks until it was finally, it's always at the last minute that I swoop in. I'm like, I'm just curious about the questions because, I might also have an application of my own for, my own thing that I'm doing. So like, what are other people asking about these questions? And that's how I got myself to actually go through and do it. Sometimes we need a little coaxing from the logical brain. And I went through the question and I went through another question. Before I knew it, I had submitted the application, and I'm just like laughing about it. And then I got contacted about an interview. And of course, when I got on the interview, it was also just curiosity. I was never going to do it, actually do it. I had no money and all this stuff. So,
That's a common theme of people who take Sleepover Mystery School. They have no money, but they somehow find a way.
It's so crazy. It's almost like if you want something, and it's calling to you, like the whole universe is conspiring to make it happen somehow. Or we just get really resourceful, I don't know. Either way.
Yeah. So you got on the interview call and you somehow ended up agreeing to come to Sleepover Mystery School. Did you talk to Lucy or Layla?
I talked to Layla, which again, just like the universe just knew all the strings to pull to get me in there, because Layla and I instantly connected. And when I texted her afterwards, which of course, I was like the whole time during the interview, like, I'm not actually doing this. And as soon as we got off the call, I was like, I guess I have to do this. Like, I don't know how it's gonna happen, but I said, Jesus, take the wheel. And she was like super on board with that. I think she said that was her number one mantra or something. So I was like, okay. And then I somehow just pushed a couple of buttons and found out that I can get another credit line for exactly the amount that I needed. And we were in.
Marvelous. So then you underwent the whole process, all of the secret rituals that we can't talk about and fun stuff like that. But I'm curious, what do you feel like Sleepover Mystery School brought to your life? Because, I know what your presence there brought me a whole ton, because I would look and I would see your gorgeous face, and you were so in touch with your heart. Like, there would be tears.
I'm a crier. Translation. I always be crying. Whatever's happening, I'd be crying.
And it was so great. I was like, well, something must be resonating here with Anca at least. It was always so beautiful to see your tears. Thank you for that.
I mean, it was all the things. It was all the things. I appreciate having my mind open to new things that I was, wouldn't in a million years considered. But then there's something that pings me, and it's like finding that it's safe to inquire is a beautiful thing. I mean, the night before I came to the first immersion, I was like, is this gonna be like a wise eye chat kind of like, crazy? Like, I was one of those, But I'm like, fuck it. Can I say that on the?
Yes.
It was just gonna happen. So none of it made sense, but it was just gonna happen. And then, understanding that all these things that I was taught were so wrong actually are just a different lens through which to look at the same truth, and which helped me get this truth more and more in my body, like that's what it's all about. So I was complete noob to all the things that we're learning, except when, you threw a little bit of Jesus in there and everybody else freaked out. I was like, oh, thank you.
That's how we scare the other ones.
Yeah.
It's big, there's a lot of bait and switch, but
it's good. It's super effective and appreciated. I appreciate it because you want the people who are open, and that's what you're getting, and it's a beautiful thing. And I started to see, the just absolute mind-blowing beauty and truth in all of these different ways to look at things, in ritual, and which definitely resonated with me as an artist. And I realized like, oh, I've been doing ritual my whole life. I didn't realize I was calling it something else, or I didn't know I was doing this, or I thought this was just like playing and being silly and worthless, wasting your time things that I can't help do because of who I am. And then astrology, and astrology is a big one. Like, I'm still barely even remotely scratching the surface, but I am seeing how, there's like literally a map in the sky to your soul, and it's all like exactly right. And then, as you move through time, it keeps like reflecting back all the things, like, wow, how amazing is that? And the fact that like there's more and more, I find that there is nothing to be scared of. So I'm digging now, and I'm like, I love that we're having this conversation because it helps me a lot when I say things out loud to understand what's really going on. And what's really going on is that there's nothing to be afraid of. The more I do this work, I realize like all the things that we were scared of are just literally more of me, more parts of me. People are talking about wars, and I know you're doing battle magic, and there's, that's a lens through which you can look at it as well. But the more and more I go on this path, I realize that there's just more to love.
Absolutely. Well, battle magic is a big bait and switch too.
Did we ruin it?
No, it's okay. It's okay. I mean, I like the martial metaphor of battle magic and everything, but those who are in battle magic know that what we do is a magical working that's all about balancing the energies of the earth, so including all of them. So all of the energies, sexual energies, anger, aggression energies, they all get balanced and circulated and brought into like greater consciousness in the name of forming the second coming of Christ, the self-realized body of Christ. So the process of the collective unconscious turning into a collective consciousness. And
the balancing.
Yeah, the balancing, the scales of Mott.
I've been having big revelations with that lately, because I've been somebody who has run to these extremes my whole life, and I thought I hated balancing, and it just
sounds so boring, doesn't it?
That's exactly what I used to say. Like, I would comment on people's stuff about balance, like, boring. Like, literally, I was that person, you know.
Me too. Yes.
But it turns out actually that what I've been going towards the whole time is balance. You know, I hated politics, right? Quote unquote, because I can understand how people are so like black and white about everything. So I would end up fighting with both, and like that's all I did. Is just like, how do you guys think that there, in this one polarity is gonna be salvation? Like, you know, again, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills, but I would just like fight with everybody, and I would just go to extremes. And like, I'm just now realizing, oh, it's all been a quest for balance. And like, because I've been like embracing and being open to seeing truth in this end of things and being able to see truth in this end of things, then it's all like actually balancing out, and then you're in flow, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yes. I love how you say, you know, there's really nothing to be afraid of. It's all me. I think that is the core heart of spiritual realization. There's this philosopher on YouTube I'm really into. His name is Nalhek Morgan, and the YouTube channel is called Formscapes. But he has this video I found because I keep feeling like time is speeding up, like time is going way faster for me than it used to go, even in like 2021. Like I feel like time moved way slower. Anyway, so I was searching for stuff about that, and I found this video of his called Time is Accelerating. And he talks in there about basically how the only purpose of a universe that makes sense is a universe that has a will to seeking experiences of difference that are very intense and ultimately intensely harmonized. And the only way that one gets an experience, so like, you know, if you look at an intricate artwork and it has like a deep fractal symmetry to it, but it has, you know, a lot of light, a lot of dark, a lot of, you know, contrast, basically. But it's all harmonized into one whole. And it's like, so I think about that a lot, and I think about how, you know, what that requires, what experiencing intensity but also harmony requires is a willingness to meet experiences of otherness, so the unknown, potentially the painful, potentially the scary, with an open heart, and that, you know, that welcoming recognition of like, you are important too. You are as important as I am. You are as lovable as I am. Whatever you are, however threatening you seem to me, I have to bow to you and honor you and respect you, and maybe you'll eat me alive, but I'm gonna honor you while you do that. So like that kind of attitude, that kind of Christ-like attitude, it makes sense to me that like that is the will of the universe, and that is the logos. Like the, you know, Jesus said, I am the Alpha and the Omega. Like there's no other, like, why else have a universe if not for these deep loving encounters with extreme otherness? Like, there's no other fucking reason. Like, if you just so like so Nalhek Morgan contrasts this with the will to power. And, you know, there's been all sorts of philosophers like Nietzsche and other folks who have been like, well, it's all about power. That's what drives human life, is we want to be able to control our environment, control other people. And it's like, yeah, that is definitely a drive in humans to control things. But it's like, if you control everything so that it doesn't threaten you,
It's no fun.
It's zero
no fun whatsoever.
It's zero fun for anybody. And there's no graciousness, there's no miracle, there's just like this homogenized nothingness, really. It's like a void that's like the ultimate end, the ultimate telos of the will to power is like total void, because that's what's easiest to control, is a homogeneous gray mass. And so anyways, I love that that video called Time is Accelerating, for anybody who wants to look it up, because I think he just does a beautiful job of, and he references the philosophy of Rudolf Steiner and Alan Watts and a bunch of other people to explain it. But I loved how you touched upon it too, Anca, because I just think that is the absolute core of everything. And that's what I'm striving to remind myself of all the time, because it's like that's the attitude that's needed also for the union of the conscious and the unconscious mind. Because anything in our nightmares, anything that our unconscious is producing in our lives, you know, situations or actions that we don't like, that's something other which is appearing and like asking to be honored, asking to be loved with the same fervor with which we love our own egos. And sometimes I think that that's obvious, like, you know, Christ said, love your neighbor as yourself, and I do believe that he wanted us to love our actual neighbors, but I also think he meant, you know, fucking love everything as much as you love your own ego. Try it out.
I think it's actually not as much a commandment as it is just the truth. It's just how it is. Like, love yourself, love your neighbor as yourself is just truth. You cannot love your neighbor differently.
That's also true. Yes, that it's a psychological truth.
It's the same thing. Like, you think you love others and you don't love yourself. No, it's all the same things. It's two sides of the same coin, and I think that's like actually what it means.
Brilliantly said. And yeah, and what that makes me think about in regards to what I was just saying with the analogy is that, like, it's not real self-love to be afraid of otherness. Like, real self-love entails, like, respecting oneself enough to have an open heart and have that graciousness. And something that helps me to connect with that, I was talking about it with Layla on the last little podcast episode we did, was just, like, reflecting on the ultimate powerlessness of the ego. It's my favorite thing to think about. It, like...
I got some stuff about that.
Yeah? What do you got about that?
Everything you're saying, this is not what I thought we were going to talk about, but here we go. Because it's there. I mean, I'm finding this thing that you're talking about in every aspect of my life. That everything has become about integration and that joy of like discovering that everything is all right, like everything is lovable, and that's the only way. Like, all the things that we're scared of, all the things that we think we don't want, again, it's just like a case, the gift that keeps on giving. I was telling you last night, I never do it on purpose, but it just kind of happens. I'm like, oh, there it is. just happened. So one of the big ones for me that I didn't set out to like explore has been with sexuality. And when I first heard about kink at all, I was intrigued, like, basically just because sex had been really, really boring, and I knew there was something wrong with that. I was like, it's not supposed to be like that, like, because everything else in the world makes total sense. And this is, you know, this is where I was, again, speaking of time speeding up, this was like 7 years ago. I thought that what feels good to the man is not what feels good to the woman, and that just didn't add up to me. I'm like, everything else in the universe makes sense, I can feel it, and this doesn't make sense. So, you know, fast forward, I learned about kink, and I thought, like, oh, it's just sex can be interesting, you know. That's how it got my attention. But it wasn't like, you know, I was obsessing over this kind of stuff, or I had these scenarios in my head. But then when I discovered that sex was good, and then I was with a person that was just enough different, just enough the same, that I felt that excitement and safety to be with, then, and I was, you know, as you know, I'm open and experiential in nature. Like, that's how I do magic, that's how I do life. I experiment and then figure it out. Something calls to me, I'll jump in. So, long story short, I started having this crazy sex that wasn't like planned. It's not like we're, you know, it's not like typical kink where you would be talking about a scenario and then, you know, what you want, make a plan and show up. No, we'd be like so tuned in, my boyfriend and I, physically, and we'd just have an experience. And sometimes we'd set it up with, I don't know, some silly outfit, something that I thought he would be into and I'm also into. Seems exciting. So as this keeps happening, I started realizing as I'm waiting for him in my little outfit that, oh, this is a ritual. There's something happening here bigger than us that somehow came together in a way that I couldn't have planned for, that is like way more magical than anything I could have tapped into myself. So it first happened when I just realized one time while we were having sex, I had it felt like memories because it was so real of being a wolf. And it just felt so real, like we were wolves. It was natural. It was like that's what was happening. That's where we were at. And later we talk about it. I tell him what was happening for me, and he's like, "Oh, interesting, because I'd been thinking about this." I'm like, "Oh, so we can tap into that place without talking about it." And then after a while, so every sex encounter date that we had would be a crazy psychedelic journey of all kinds of shadow integration, all the things. Like, it's not stuff that I would sit around and fantasize about, like none of that stuff.
You weren't fantasizing about being a wolf.
I was not fantasizing about being a wolf. I mean, I'm since having children, actually, I've gotten more and more in touch with my animal side. I wear my cat ears, and I think that's because I actually secretly am a wolf that's leading a clan of cats, but that's a story for another time. They've accepted me. So no, I'm not sitting around having fantasies about being a wolf,
but
and yet that happened. It just
Yeah.
arose, and then other things that definitely, I didn't know they were there. I think there's, stuff in my family line maybe that I'm just naturally integrating. And then there's bigger things, like we started playing archetypes with. Again, I wouldn't realize when I'm putting on a bunny outfit that until the last moment I'm like, oh, he had brought these flowers the other day. It's lilies. I'm wearing a bunny outfit, and I for some reason thought I would grab these ribbons before I came here, and now I'm looking around and it almost like I landed into this like pre-made ritual, I'm like, what is going on? That's the first time I realized and I was like, this is something. I'm also working on a painting series about the alchemical marriage, and slowly it started as a painting of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, and then slowly I started getting the vision of, it's a series, and it's not all Jesus and Mary Magdalene, and there are other pairs of, these famous archetypes, gods and goddesses. So I definitely have Babylon riding the beast, and I knew I had. There's a weird Kali and Jesus one I'm a little nervous. It's like way controversial to even think about, so we'll get there. And then I had a Persephone moment. So again, I would just like go to my boyfriend's house, take a bath in this crazy tub that he has that feels like you literally are queen of the underworld in this huge black tub. It's like that, and things would just happen. It's the bathtub portal that will,
Wow.
And then I'd put on an outfit that I'm like, I don't know how I even thought of this thing, but suddenly I'm here. And in the bunny one, I was like, oh, is this this feels like Ishtar, Inanna type of thing, because the bunny, all the Easter-y things that somehow gathered around me, and here I am, dressed as a bunny, ready to be devoured. And I swear I'm making a point. We're getting there. I'm an artist. I feel like everything is important, so we take the scenic route. So there I am. This was the first time I realized, like, this is an actual ritual that is playing me, like it's playing me. I don't know what about my boyfriend and I together brings this on, but we're here for it. And I have this crazy experience of literally being a bunny that's about to get annihilated, consumed. And it was one of the most intense experiences of my life. where I could feel time expanding in the moment where I knew that death was coming, certain death, not only that, but death by being consumed. And I realized how in all of those details of like what happens in nature when that happens, it was actually fulfilling some of my deepest desires in a weird, twisted ways. Like I have always thirsted for that connection, that intimacy, that's so like I want to be deep inside you and I want you deep inside me, and like that like melding into one. And like I just knew and felt it. There's not a lot of, I don't know what's happening that moment, in those moments. I feel like it's actually complete flow, where there's like thinking and feeling and being in your body is all one, like true embodiment. So I don't understand how to like tease it apart, that while I'm having that experience I'm also understanding what is happening on a deep level. But I felt how being consumed in that way is feeling some of my deepest desires, and I was able to surrender to being consumed in this ecstatic way. And like there was so much there, like the yin and yang was just like living through my body, and layers and layers to it. But that time expanding in the moment, and how the gift of death is informing life, and it's making like that freedom of right before you're about to be annihilated, you can completely let go and be fully yourself and enjoy the experience and be alive, like for real, be alive, not like how most of us just go like, where are we when we're doing this thing? Where even are we? Because we're usually not here. Not here. And in that moment I was there and I was also everywhere else, that every being that's ever been consumed like that. The ecstasy of being consumed, the gift of death that informs lives and helps us to truly live, all of those things wrapped into one. So stuff like that has been happening.
Yes.
It's hard to even put into words, but
Well,
so.
I love that. I think you put it into words fantastically well. Wow, that's very vivid and very beautiful. That reminds me, and what a deep example of meeting the other with love, of like opening and surrendering to being devoured. That's so the essence of it. It reminds me of something that Crowley wrote in the Equinox. I forget what it was called exactly, but it was a short story about crossing the abyss, and it had to do with allowing a cat to eat you alive on an astral vision, I think. But and that's that kind of surrender of like, yes, eat me alive, take me life, take me death. That's really it. Obviously that's what Christ was doing on the cross. And yeah,
it gets more practical too, since there's people listening, it gets more practical, because after having those experiences, and I mean that's beautiful in itself, and like if you just lived your life pursuing experiences like that, amazing. But lately I've also been in a very practical way accepting all of the things that I think I don't like in my life, and I've been I've been asking, this is what I'm looking for. I want to be in that like existential kink flow, like I'm really knowing that I'm loving this experience. And I've tapped into moments of accepting myself so fully, and then accepting everybody else, because I wouldn't be me without all of these pieces playing their role exactly right. And like you start seeing how that is, and you can't tease it apart, like it's all one. And then the people in your life that you definitely think, I like to pretend like my ex-husband really doesn't exist, even though we have children together and they have to go back and forth between us, and it's like one of those last frontiers for me, where I was like, I like to pretend like this person doesn't exist. And then having those moments of deep appreciation for myself, and all the things that I've done that I've judged myself about, when I realized like, oh no, it's all been right. Actually, it's all been exactly right. There's like nothing to judge, like you were saying earlier, very ego dissolving, you know. And then like, yeah, and then everybody else that was involved in that, whatever role they played, and however much I didn't feel like I liked it at the time or still don't, it was all exactly right. And like then you really can't tease it apart. The love for yourself and the love for the other, it's like, you know, when you get to that point, like, there's no difference. It's you can't have one without the other.
Yeah, that deep interdependence of everything. It is a huge mind fuck. And yeah, I know what you mean. I was just thinking, looking at, let's see, I just want to look where we are. So we have about 15 minutes left in the hour, Anca, and you know, in the mystery school, we talk about our relationship with the divine in the Western esoteric tradition as, you know, knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel. And I feel like I've heard you speak beautifully about that, and I was just curious I would love the audience to hear your, you know, how you would describe your relationship with holy guardian angel / God / you know, how does knowledge and conversation work for you?
You know, ongoing, just like every relationship, you're figuring out what the heck is this as you go along, and you never really settle beyond that, which is, you know, a good thing because it doesn't get boring. But where I've been at lately has been seeing and understanding that I'll just call it the beloved is literally everything that I think is not me, you know, inside and outside of me, but yet it is me, but yet it's not. That's the beloved. So that's how I understand it now, and that's when it really hit, because I think the circumstances are something separate, right? And I've been on this journey of seeing that I'm not a victim of what's happening to me for a long time, but I also didn't love it, you know. Can't say that I loved it until I heard somebody else from the mystery school use this metaphor. Like I can't even remember what he said, but he said something about the beloved that just hit me. I was like, oh, it's all the same thing. The outside and the inside, it's all the same thing, and that's the beloved. And literally anything that you're resisting in the outside world, you're resisting yourself. Like that's what you're just rejecting. I'm rejecting me. I'm rejecting the beloved that wants to be one with me and is already loving me and doing everything just perfectly and just right. So there's been, you know, there's times of actual conversation where I'm asking things, which, you know, again, it's always interesting because I know I'm talking to myself, and yet also this thing that is other, you know, and there's ways that in which now I'm just being open to it, like, just show me. And
well,
also,
your perception of synchronicities and patterns and the artistic connections is exquisite.
There's that. I mean, the synchronicities are getting so wild. So I had this series of initiations in February. There was like 8 days of like bam, 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 bam. Lots of stuff there that happened. But right after that, I was in what you would describe that Tiferet place where it's like complete everything is awesome, you know, kind of flow. And that's when we took a reunion trip with the mystery school to Mexico, which was an amazing experience. Everything that was happening during that time was a synchronicity, like everything. And not only that, but I would just follow these little threads of inspiration, you know. It's about noticing things, really. It's about paying attention. Like if you did nothing else but sat here and just watched the garden, like there's nothing more psychedelic and wild than to just be in nature and actually be there and actually look. So I just started noticing and looking and being open to these things. So for example, we ended up, I mean, all sorts of things that nobody liked were happening all morning, and I was like the annoying one in this place, like, guys, everything's fine, we're gonna have a great day, trust me. in that kind of place, but also like couldn't stop telling everybody about all the synchronicities I had already experienced. So you're gonna be a nut job when you're in that place. There's just no other way. You gotta make peace with it. And you're gonna, hear yourself talk a lot more than you feel comfortable and anybody else feels comfortable, and it's just how it is. And there's times when you're just gonna be quiet and everybody wants to talk to you. But anyways, synchronicities. So we end up at this crazy 3D museum where you could be part of the picture. It's like all just pictures, but the way that they use the three-dimensional space and the distortion in the picture, that you can interact with it as if you came to life. And I noticed that the person who works there cares about her job, and that's rare. So when I saw that, it's little things like that. I'm just noticing. I'm like, you guys, because the people weren't taking this seriously. They're like, this is hokey. It's not, it's whatever. We're just having fun together, but this is like a weird hokey place. And I'm like, no, it's actually really magical, and this person really cares about it. Like if we're having a good time, she's gonna have a good time. We can affect her day like that by just like being open to this. Not even a minute later, and she didn't hear me, not even a minute later, she comes to me and she's asking me if I'm an artist. And then we strike up a conversation, Yesenia. She's this earth angel that just like, immediately we find out that she is also an artist. She indeed loves what she does, and she uses the toast deck for her card. It's just like.
Sorry, I paused the recording. She had rose decals.
She had rose decals on her fingernails, and there were a million synchronicities, like so many. And just we could barely, I understand enough Spanish where she would speak to me in Spanish, and she understands enough English, and that's how we communicated. But we got enough through. Within 2 minutes of meeting this person, I'm like grabbing her hand, whispering to her a little secret, and then grabbing her hand, running in the other room, showing the people something, and them having all like. I tell her, I'm like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to walk into that room. I'm going to hold your hand. I'm going to show them this. And they're all going to go like, ah! Because I had been like showing them synchronicities all day. So I knew this was coming, And so I'm just pointing them. And now it's just this fun journey of like roping everybody into my fun adventure that I'm on, where everything that happens is a freaking crazy synchronicity and everybody can see it, and I'm just blowing their minds and we're having so much fun. And that's what happens. I meet this person, and 2 minutes later I'm running around through the museum giggling, holding her hand and showing my friends this synchronicity, and they I like pull them all in, and they're all like come close and they look and they all go wow, and we all have an amazing time. And now I've made a lifelong friend. And that's how everything else unfolded on that trip. Again, millions of synchronicities, and I'm telling them the stories and they're all like blown away, but like this is life. They're just there, and it starts by noticing. Because if you're not noticing and appreciating what's already here, then you're not gonna see more.
I feel like that's excellent wisdom about what conversation with the beloved is like. It is that noticing and that marveling at the deep synchronous interconnections, and that being open to recognizing the beauty and the virtue in another person, like you just described.
Everybody, including the things that we don't like. And it's the other big practice. So there's like 2 more things that I'll briefly touch on. The other big one is always the mirror, always turning the mirror. Whatever's happening, whatever people are doing, saying, things you don't like, whenever there's a trigger. That's also funny, because I used to think that there's no such thing as triggers. You're all just being wusses, way too sensitive. But when there's a trigger, that's an opportunity to look in the mirror, and it's always like, ooh, what is this interesting sensation? What is it telling me about me? What is it telling me about what is the universe trying to show me that I haven't been seeing? So now I'm making the sensations friends. So, like every time that something happens that rubs me the wrong way, I'm like, oh, what's here? And there's times when it can be exhausting because you're the only one that's doing that, it feels like. And you get to that point, like, seriously, like, but it's so worth it that in the end is like, and you can take a break. It's always like, okay, now I feel that's the beauty of it, because you get to be honest with yourself, and now this feels like too much, and I'm gonna take a break and cultivating safety within your body and capacity within your body is a huge one, like, because it's everything, right?
Yeah.
We are everything. So how much capacity do you have? That's how much you can experience, and if you're willing to feel the things that maybe don't feel so great, then again, two sides of the same coin. Like, if you can't just like want, and I realized this with my boyfriend, like, why do I have the best sex ever every single time we have sex? Like, every single time, 2 years later, over 2 years later, every single time. It's because I keep opening. Like, this is my practice. I keep opening. It's intentional. And at first I was opening the sacral, right? I was opening that. It took me 2 years until I was like, one day I was like, I wonder what would happen if I opened this, pointing at my heart.
Yeah.
And it was like an instant explosion, and like the mirror turned, and I saw that all the things that I was saying he was doing, that this is why our relationship, like, it could be perfect if only he didn't do this and that. And I realized I was actually doing all of those things, and it took like a moment then of being like, I wonder what would happen if I open my heart. So yeah, that's the practice. And then that's how you cultivate more and more capacity for more. And I realized, like, if I open, who knows what the heck is gonna come in. Like, you can't filter. It's not kind of like filter, sieve or whatever. Like, if you're open to all the things, and you just gotta learn to love them all. And that's the journey.
That is so beautifully said, Anca. I thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. Tell the folks at home how they can get in touch with you and, buy your art and buy your hypersigil services and everything.
It's ancagray.com. That's my website, but I live on Instagram. So at Anca Gray on Instagram, Gray with an A.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for tuning in, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. Remember to like, share, tell your friends about Sleepover Podcast. Thank you for being on the cutting edge of spirituality, part of the second coming of Christ. Yay. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Bye-bye.